Welcome, everyone. Glad to have everybody here for Product Tank, the first one of 2020, right? Woohoo! All right. So I'm Scott Yelton, one of the organizers for Product Tank, and I feel privileged to be here with you guys tonight to kick off our new year. We've got a lot of exciting stuff that's going to happen this year. First, I'm going to talk just a little bit about the organization for anyone that has not been to a Product Tank event, or maybe your first timers. I see one hand. We got more in the audience? Oh, several. Yeah. Oh, well, not you, Dean. You don't count. First of all, Product Tank, international organization founded by Mind the Product in the UK. We celebrated, it's in 2010, so we're celebrating 10 years. And I think the date will be in May, so we'll have a special event that month. Usually they gather folks from different tank organizations and do some broadcast videos, some fun stuff there. But the point is, there's a lot of chapters of Product Tank out there. Of course, ours is the best. But we do share, there's mind share across that, and you can leverage that through some of the channels that are out there. There is a Slack channel for Mind the Product. There's newsletters. There's a lot of information you can tap into, as well as the most important resource, which is the people, which is why we're all here tonight, right? So we can network, we can share ideas, we can promote the ideas and promote product as a field, because it is one of the best fields, and it's getting even stronger. Our goal, to learn from each other, share best practices, and of course, inspire each other to do great things in the product world. So, first of all, I'd like to thank our sponsor for tonight, HQ Raleigh, for this beautiful venue. Give them a small golf clap. That's right. I hear they're up to 4 locations now, Dan. So yeah, they're expanding. We also have with us tonight one of our speakers, Dan Moore with Vaporware, is going to be presenting tonight, and we also have Tatyana Petrova, who's going to be speaking with us tonight as well, and want to let you know about some upcoming events that we have. So next, we're going to have a social, and we're going to spread our wings a little bit. We're going to go to Durham this time to Full Steam Brewery. Anybody ever been there? If you haven't, highly recommend the Working Man's Lunch, my favorite beverage. And it's a great venue. So if you've never been there, it'll be a treat, and we hope to pull in some additional folks in that area. And then in March, we'll have another content session. I know Dan and Tatyana, I think you both have been hard at work finding us some great speakers to come line up our content session for March, as well as throughout 2020. I think we're going to get some great knowledge this year, so hang with us for that. So I do want to throw out a little shout out though for some help. We are looking for additional corporate sponsors, and just to give you an idea, how low a bar we set. We're looking for someone. We look for venues. We look for food and beverage sponsors to bring us great things like we've got with Burger 21 tonight, and with HQ. And then we also we look for some assistance with our wonderful videographer Daniel in the back there, large and in charge. So always looking for that. So if anyone has any ideas, whether it's your company or someone you're familiar with, please funnel it to one of the organizers, and we will make sure to follow up with them. And lastly, I just want to let you guys know, I think I mentioned it, but we do have a Slack channel for Mind the Product, as well as our ProductTank.org site, where we will be posting this video along with a lot of other content. So make sure that you guys know what we've got. So without further ado, we're going to bring up our speakers for tonight. Tatyana Petrova from UltraStrategy, and Dan Moore with Vaporware.
So I'm Tatyana Petrova, and I'm a business consultant with the company called UltraStrategy. I'm originally from Russia, and I happen to have one of the most common first names in Russia, and also one of the most common last names in Russia. And in fact, I had 3 people with the same first name and last name just in my elementary school. So we have a running joke in my family that I had to flee the country and find a place to live where I have to spell my name. And this is pretty much the story of how I ended up in North Carolina.
Hi, I'm Michael.
Yes. So I'm here for about 20 years, and I genuinely and sincerely care about the topic of product strategy. So I'm very excited today that I have the floor and have an opportunity to share with you about my favorite subject. I spent years studying this, researching product strategies, experimenting with product strategies. And in fact, this is what I consult my clients on. And my clients are software companies and the IT-heavy companies that are building their software products either for internal use or for interfacing with the customers. And I'm helping them to improve their product strategy processes and strategize the product management side of their organization. So that's my story. So the product strategy topic is huge. And the one aspect of it that I think the experts don't talk about enough is the product strategy execution. We hear a lot about the product ideation and discovery, the opportunity assessments, the product strategy formulation. But yet it is, I believe it is the execution that is the hardest part of the journey. And this is where the product managements experience the most pains. So today I want to focus specifically on the execution part of that journey. Of course, we'll touch on what the product strategy is, the purpose, the components, so we can relate the other parts of the story. So what is product strategy? There are a lot of definitions. I really like the particular quote from the professor of the Kellogg School of Management, Professor Mohan Shorny. He put it this way. He said, product strategy is the art and science of understanding customer problems and aligning the organization around creating desirable outcomes for customers and your business. And think about this way. It's a little hard to read, but these are all the functions within your organization that have a certain influence and opportunity to touch your product along this product journey. There's a lot of functions. And each of these functions might have their own idea and might have their own motivation on what that product, how it should look like, right? What your executives envisioned, that idea that they had, might not be the same thing as what sales want to sell to that customer that they talked to yesterday, or what your technical support wants to support as a product. So all these things need to be aligned. All these functions need to be aligned. So essentially, the product strategy provides that context and the decision-making framework for all these functions to be able to work in a synchronized fashion. So the product strategy, of course, is not created in a silo. It fits a certain product strategy stack, right? And depending on the size of your organization, that stack might be more or less complex. So if you're in a early stage startup, your corporate strategy is pretty much the same thing as your product strategy, because it's the product success that ultimately decides if your company would live, right? But as your company grows, you're starting to have the distinguished corporate strategy that drives the rest of the strategies in your hierarchy of strategies. And once your product starts growing, right, you start getting questions, how do we grow that particular product? Do we create a new flavor of the product? Do we create a complementary product that kind of builds into the whole offering? All these decisions would be very hard to think about if you didn't, from early on, develop a certain understanding of what your product line strategy is. So this is pretty much how the sequence of thinking goes strategically through the organization. So how would one approach the product strategy formulation? And there is no shortage of the product strategy frameworks or different approaches on how to formulate a product strategy. Sometimes there are too many, makes it a little hard to figure out, okay, from all these frameworks, from all these approaches, which one's right for me? Which ones will work for our organization? I don't have a right answer for you, but this is the framework that I personally use. And it's actually adopted off of the framework called V2MOM. It is letter V, 2 MOM. This framework has been championed by Salesforce They've been using this for years, are very serious about incorporating it into their work. It's a funny name, but it stands for the two letters V's for vision and values, M for methods, O for obstacles, and M for measures. So you might say, wait, there are more elements in this framework, right, and the letters in the framework. That's because I expanded that. So I added the capabilities and the value proposition because I think these are very, very important through the product strategy formulation. So let's walk through this in order. So the vision. And because we're in a product context, right, this is the product vision. This is essentially what it is that we want to do, what's our objective here. And it's a grand statement on what our product going to be when it grows up. And of course, it should correlate to your corporate vision. The values are the principles and beliefs on why do we care about this particular problem? Why do we care about building this product? Why we? Right, so these are the segments, either all of the values that are coming from your company strategy or a subset of these values, but why do we care? The capabilities are the company capabilities relevant to the product that you are building. And not enough companies at this phase of their consideration, not enough companies spend enough time thinking about their capabilities. And that is very unfortunate because ultimately these are the capabilities that direct what methods you're going to choose with your strategy. And when you'll be evaluating obstacles, you need to think about your capabilities as well. So I wish more companies were considering them very seriously at this point. It would significantly increase your chances for success through the execution phase. So the methods. Methods are the actions and steps to get the job done. So these are essentially the how-tos of your product strategy. And do not confuse this with the list of features that our product is going to have. This is not the list of, this is rather the key moves that we are going to take to execute on our vision. And the methods, when you're thinking about the methods, this is when you're linking back to your capabilities. Like, okay, do we have the certain capability in the company, or do we need to go ahead and partner with someone or build that component or buy that component somewhere else? So this is where we're considering all this. The obstacles are, of course, the challenges and the problems that we're anticipating that we're going to have to overcome when we're executing on our vision. And the more realistic we are on these obstacles, the more it's going to help us down the road. Like we need to be realistic. The value proposition kind of encapsulates all of this above, right? It links back into who our customer is, what problem we are solving, and why that solution that we are building is going to be better for the customers to address the problem. Essentially, why would they want to pay for this? So that's the thinking process that I recommend when you think about the product strategy. What's important on top of that is that all the elements in this framework, they need to be related. It is this relationship, the connection between these elements makes it your company product strategy, makes it work for you specifically, and makes your product strategy unique. So it's very important for a thought-through product strategy to have all these elements connected.
Can you repeat the definition for capabilities?
The capabilities are, if you think about, these are the skills of my organization. This is my strong strengths of my organization. But it's also considering what am I lacking? What are my weaknesses? Right? What is I'm really good at that I would leverage specific to that strategy? And if I'm realistic that I'm lacking some of this, then I either should change my strategy or I should compensate for that. I have a plan for that. Does it answer it? So let's say we formulated our strategy. Great. Now what? Well, now we execute. Fun part. Before we go into that part of the discussion, I want to bring you an example of a product strategy execution failure. And I want to bring us all to the Microsoft Vista. Anyone remembers Microsoft Vista? Try not to. You're proving my point already. So what was that with Microsoft Vista? So predecessor was Microsoft XP, then Vista was released in 2007, and then successor was Windows 7. And the interesting part of the story is that if you think about what problem Microsoft Vista was trying to solve, was very similar to what Windows 7 was trying to solve. The strategic component, like the core of the strategy, was the same. Yet it is the Microsoft Vista that had their sales never picked up, right? They could never move forward. They could never get the momentum. The IT departments were refusing to migrate. The users were complaining all around. And in fact, by some rankings, it's Microsoft Vista that was called, in the top 10 biggest tech failures of the decade. Like, pretty significant flop. So what makes it different compared to the Microsoft Windows 7? Well, if you go, a lot is written about this, but if you go and dig into like individual comments of people who worked on that, the developers were saying, well, we felt like a lot of things were going on at the same time. There were a lot of enhancements worked on in parallel. Yet I'm working on my enhancement, have no idea how this is related to my parallel team's investment and what kind of theme it's all feeding into. And ultimately, I don't understand how would anyone want to actually buy this as a product. So it's coming directly from the developers. And to me, this highlights the problem with the execution. Right? So let's talk about the execution. What brings us, yeah, the selling Microsoft Windows 7 was very easy after Vista. It's like, why would anyone want to buy this? That's maybe that was thought through. So it brings us to the question, why do product strategies fail? And specifically, what are the flaws in product strategy execution that we as product managers should kind of watch out for? And the one thing that I think was already brought up during Dan's presentation, so what's the alignment, right? There should be an alignment across all these functions of the organization, the diagram that we looked at the beginning of the talk. The product strategy provides that context and the decision-making framework. So all these functions that have an opportunity to touch your product through the life cycle of the product, they can change, they can impact that product. So if they don't have a context for this decision-making, these everyday decisions through the duration of your release, they tend to balloon into the ever-growing deviation from what you originally envisioned as what you were going to build. So you're starting at one point, but then magically, through all these changes and decisions and considerations, you arrive at a different spot completely. So this is very important to have everyone on the same page, right? So the easy to say, hard to do, but the alignment is the lack of the alignment is one of the major issues with the product strategy execution. Another twist on the alignment is the skewed influence within organizational functions. What do I mean by that? There could be that a certain organizational function has an unbalanced power within the organization. So if you have let's say, a development-driven organization, your R&D might be the one deciding what goes in and out of the product. And R&D might disagree with my statement, but we usually think there is a problem in this approach. And why would I list this separately? Well, because the root cause of this issue is it's rooted in the organizational culture. So it's a much bigger issue. And me as a product manager, it will be much harder to address something like this rather than just fixing the communication problem. Not saying,
Just yell out. Sometimes that works.
Yeah,
In this particular one with the skewed influence in the organizational functions, sometimes I've actually seen where it's twofold, right? It's not that it's skewed so that somebody is always doing the right thing. It's all about who came up with the right way to make the executives believe that that fits their corporate objectives better than the other person's. And it becomes a giant political game to be able to
Yeah.
give the power back to product management.
yes. And I've been in this, and it's very hard.
Yeah, it's one of the biggest ones that I must say that I've noticed more so than the skewed influence happening over and over again. I did notice that in a company I was in that was founded by technology guys that had no idea how to run a business. Everything engineering said win. But as I've been coming along over the way, I noticed more and more of the skewed influence. I agree totally with that. But it almost feels like it depends, it hops around by who has the right thing to get corporate's ear to make sure that the executives are listening to them. And one of the things that, just if I can give a little advice that I've noticed, is if you can find when those are happening right away, go make that guy your ally. Because the one that has the ear, if you can convince him that your idea is his idea, he already has the ear of them. So it's almost backdooring and playing the political game, even though it's something probably all of us in this room need to have to do. That seems to be the most successful way to get it back, the power, what I was saying, back to product management. Because once you lose that, there's no going back.
So how do you suggest to do it?
How I suggest to do it? These are just the flaws. I'm just bringing you the facts. No, it's for something like this, it takes some political savviness on how to navigate this territory. Of course, I could go, and especially in a small organization, you can go directly to your leaderboard, and of course, it would take you quite a bit of courage, and you have to have some solid facts so that you can tactfully bring up the point that this kind of setup hurts our bottom line. So there's no magic answer. It's a tough one. That's why it's harder than a general alignment. Not like the alignment is easy.
I will say though, because I work for consultancy, but I think, that hiring a consultancy to come in and do some alignment activities and workshops, only because they're not in an interested party. I don't have an agenda whether this function or that function wins. I'm only there to facilitate your conversation and help you find that right balance. So, I mean,
Well, and a big one that I found out of that one that's helped me be successful is making sure that the engineering leaders and the product management leaders realize that they work for the team. One of the biggest things that I try to live, and I tell the guys, is I don't work for product management, I work for engineering. Obviously, we're product management. But when the engineers really to go to their back and you're able to, that seems to be the best way to keep them from being able to control the agenda what goes into and out of the products. And it's those guys you have to really make sure that they become your allies. And I've noticed when I worked for a different company many, many moons ago, and we did this to be able to get our organization aligned. And the biggest problem that our consultant did was teaching us how to communicate with each other. One of the biggest problems in why that happened. Sorry, I didn't mean
No, that's good, and I also appreciate the consulting the consulting twist. Well, especially for big organizations, commonly this is why they bring consultants, because no one within the organization would have the courage or would be listened to when they bring this news up to the management.
it takes a lot to get that
Yeah.
respect, even though you're in a product management position, even though you may be a PO for the engineering organization. It takes a lot. I agree with you. That's where the third party goes. I will agree with that.
Yep. It's a tough one. Mismatch capabilities. So I like talking about the capabilities. So not enough companies consider the capabilities when they come up with product strategy and the methods that they're going to use to execute on this. Or if they do consider, they tend to be overly optimistic. Right? The very common example that's probably close to your heart is let's say a company comes up with the very first software as a service offering, right? Almost every technical company nowadays has to go through this phase, and they're like, of course we can do this. Our developers are very smart. And piece of cake. And then significantly later than anticipated, they might end up with much delayed offering, with some significant flaws in the infrastructures, possibly very frustrated developers, and possibly even departed personnel. And because this is not about being smart, this is about the R&D not having the resources, proper resources for them to get the job done, because the company was over-optimistic to start with. Distractions. Not in one particular distraction, but a cumulative impact of all the distractions that we have to deal with through the product strategy execution, right? And there are multiple types. I'll touch on them briefly. And like chasing short-term goals, right? This is a big pain point. So these are the individual custom requests that come from us from that one sale that we absolutely have to close, and they have this like 3 features that they absolutely must have, and they suddenly bubble up on the top of your backlog. I see a lot of nodding. Yes. Yes. The second one is the ignore technical debt. So this is what I mean by this is if we had previous releases of the product and we took some shortcuts, which is normal part of the equation, but if we do not plan to address this and we continue rolling this way, then eventually your releases would look like all your key developers are putting off fires, fixing some problems from the production, right? So it slows down you to a crawl to be able to execute on what you really wanted to have out of the door. And my favorite one, I call this the shiny factor. These are all the shiny objects that we want to chase under the umbrella of innovation. And don't get me wrong, I'm not arguing against the innovation, but I'm a big fan of the disciplined innovation. When companies plan for this, they have a process to encourage the ideas. They provide the time and place and the environments for developers to experiment. But the chaotic chasing of the shiny objects is not innovation. So, not every product has to have the artificial intelligence. That's just my opinion.
Well, it's either chase the technical debt into the shiny object.
Okay, here you go.
Don't ask me.
So the point of all this is, of course, not just to throw all at you all the possible things that could go wrong with your product strategy execution. I want to talk what we actually can do as product managers to improve our success chances for the product. And again, I want to provide you kind of equip you with this mindset of the strategic product management, more to kind of help you prioritize your own activities, of which there are a ton. There's so much to be done by product management role. So unless you have a certain filter on how to prioritize your own day-to-day activities, it'll be very, very hard to kind of move the needle. So my take on what a strategic product manager is the orchestrator of communication and alignment, right? This is like getting everyone on the same page and making sure you're conducting this orchestra effectively. You need to make your product strategy visible. Everyone in the organization needs to know what it is, why we're building what we are building, for whom we are building what we are building, and most importantly, after any changes are done, any pivoting, any decisions are made afterwards on how we're going to tweak it, this is where the communication cycle very, very commonly breaks, because at that point, there is no more product kickoff. So this function knows about it, but all these functions don't know about it. So this is where you're breaking this kind of being on the same page alignment. The strategic product manager is the assumptions validator, including your most important assumption. If what we are building really addresses the customer problem, right? We might be starting not really knowing if that is correct. In fact, very often we don't know. And I'm not calling you on actually doing all the work for the assumptions validation. That's a lot of work. But unless someone owns this initiative, so commonly it's been forgotten. Everyone agrees that it should be done, but it's so easily, once the busy work starts, it just falls on your back burner, and then no one owns it. So you need to own this initiative. The strategic product manager is the voice of the target customer. And the key word here is target, because with all the voices that are going to come your way as a product manager, it is the voice of the target customer that you need to constantly kind of wear the hat of the target customer. Because if at the end of the day, at the end of the day, we are not delivering value to our target customer, then we obviously falling short on our product strategy. And relate.
Customer. If we have one customer that covers all our budget, and then we have the same amount of budget, but 7 customers, on which customer should be recommendation?
So it might be multiple. The product that you're building, it should have an idea for whom, kind of a generic ideal customer that you kind of envision. Like, we think that certain problem is, that certain persona represents this certain problem that we are gonna solve, right? There might be a case when we kind of solving this for 2 different type of customers. That's okay too. And maybe the 7 represent like your kind of second use case, right? That's fine. So if you really can only address one, you need to choose, unless none of them are going to get the problem solved fully, right? So the question is, if you have 2 kind of target customers like target personas, I would call it.
No,
Like,
one customer with, for example, $1 million budget, and 7 customers that covers the same. Yeah.
She's describing a scenario in which she has 50% of her company's inbound revenue is tied to one customer, and 50% is tied to 7 other customers, but they want different things. What do I do? That's what I hear you saying.
In an ideal world, though, you would create persona-based marketing materials for them. Like, you have to segment at some point. And, I mean, for like your website and your product, it has to be generic enough to where it can
Yes,
balance
you cannot, because
that.
Canada laws and our laws are different. And Canada is one customer, and US targets different.
it's really complex. No, that's common. That's common.
It's trying to find a new product and diversify.
That represents it, I think, the point very well. You have to make a tough decision. If you cannot build 2 flavors of the product, you should not be building 2 flavors of the product, right?
And I would add to this, of course, without knowing the details, it is always hard to comment, but try to look at it and understand, are they really, are they asking for different features, or are they, do they really have different problems that need to be solved? Because they might be expressing, because they might be expressing different wishes, if you will, but there could be an underlying common problem.
No, it's like literally Canada law, finance law, and US finance law. And they are not forcing anywhere beside even dollars are different.
Yeah, it's very common and very hard, because it requires a company to say no to a certain customer when they are making a sale, right?
There could also be a question of the business model. Maybe you just need to have, maybe the business needs to split.
That-
And maybe
that's
it's not just a matter of one single product addressing everybody's problems. Maybe there are some business decisions to be made.
Pretty much like multiple products.
Yeah.
So it's changing, what you're saying, change the view from product focus to persona.
I would suggest that to an earlier slide, it gets to the question of what is the overarching strategy for the company?
Yeah.
And how does that work itself into the lines, which I think was like your 4th slide, 3rd, 4th slide, right? And then what is it what does that mean for your product itself?
And then the other thing too that I hear is if you have one that's got 7 and one that's got 1, which one has the potential to get more customers out of it? Which would be the area that I would start to look at. Because especially if I have one customer taking up 50% of my company, and they go away. So, like, I'm not saying that it's the wrong decision because when it's regulatory, that money comes in for free as far as I'm concerned. So you have to weigh it depending on how you can take that product and be able to twist it to be able to grow the bottom line someplace else. And that's the difficult decision as product managers that we bring back. Where I saw it way before I went down was how do I get the corporate structure to realize that their business model may not be right. Closing a quarter may not always be the right thing for the company because we may make this quarter, may make next quarter, but if our product goes in the wrong direction 2 years from now. That's one of the biggest challenges I see as product managers in the business.
Yeah, the question is how did you get there, right? At some point, someone onboarded a customer, either that was this large customer, which very hard to say no to, like, well, we really didn't anticipate building this, but they offered us this amount of money, we're gonna take this, even though now we're ending up with 2 very different solutions that we need to build. So that's how it usually goes. And how you get out of that is there are options, but I don't think any of them are easy. Once you're in the situation, it takes some strategic thinking and analysis. What our way forward? Yeah, I mean, someone will have to either create 2 different products, or we need to actually offboard eventually a portion of our customers and make a focus on one category of customers. So there's no magic. Yep. So the focus is the focus question is very related to the working on something that actually solves our target customer problem. Because all this like custom requests from the existing customer, let's say this one large customer comes in and starts requesting custom solutions because they need something very different than the other 7 clients that you have. So how do you guard your development on actually executing on what you want in your product to look like? So that's a focus keeper. And I also believe a successful product manager should have a certain level of skepticism. So they could be an effective reality check owner, right? Ask these questions like, do we have what we need to build what we are building? Are we focusing? Like, are we like going in all kinds of directions? Are we building the right thing? Are we still building what we intended to build? And is what we intended to build still the thing that we actually need to be building, right? All these like questions should be asked so that we are keeping the big picture in mind. Because if I, as a product manager, don't ask these questions, I'm pretty sure no one would. So that's the reality of that cycle. And last but not least, kind of summarizing all this, the strategic product manager is really the one with the 360-degree view of your product. So kind of in the center of that product universe, right? And being in the center of this universe and keeping this 360-degree view is a lot of work. So, right, there's no secret. It is a lot of work. But it does become, I promise you, a rewarding work. At some point, when you do hear from your customers that they do want your product and you did help them solve their problems. So there is a benefit at the end. We can argue afterwards if this is enough of a benefit, but that's a topic for the over the beer conversation. And I hope that these tips that I shared with you would help you at least somewhat going back to your work tomorrow and keeping your thinking about your priorities, what I should be working on today. Would this actually move the needle versus and help me get the successful product out of the door versus a busy work that I have to do. So that's it. That's it on my side. Have some contact information for you guys. And that was a very good set of questions that you guys, and I really appreciate all the insights on this topic. It's not an easy topic. And if you have anything else to share from your experiences or challenges or any other questions, please, I'm welcome. Go ahead. Any more questions?
I have one more.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
No, it's good.
Any tips or anything for, the technical debt is the biggest problem, I think, any one of us will agree to, especially if you're in a coding company, is the biggest problem that we all have. But any tips or tricks to be able to get them back to the top of the list of the guys that are controlling the purse strings? Because ultimately, when you have $100 and you're only allowed to spend $100, and you can make $1,000 by spending $100, or you can spend $100 and ensure that money comes back later because of quality, it always seems that thing falls to the bottom no matter what trick you try to pull to get management to listen, until the customers are screaming that their perception of you just sucks. Sorry to be frank, but
I have not seen this done proactively, unfortunately. If someone's seen this done proactively, I would be very happy to learn how. What I usually see is that you have to suck first, and then so that you have a fact that you can bring up. You have to bring this up.
Really cool stuff. And we get to a point where we're like, wow, that how to solve that. And then that'll be the catalyst that goes, okay, in the next 6 months you can fix the entire backlog as far as you can. I'll give you money to get the engineering team to get more bugs, they get more money. And great, we look good for 6 months, then we're back to the same cycle. And that's the one that I've been trying to figure out.
That's worse.
So I can speak to something where I've seen this be done successfully.
Okay.
And it gets back to kind of what we were talking about very early on. And I was just joking over here, Carolyn, that it's a marketing problem. It's an internal marketing problem. And so when we would be asked to build a feature that we knew, either we didn't know what we didn't know, or we knew what was going to hamstring the whole thing, right? The compromises that we were going to have to make. We would present those to the people who had a stake in the game and say, look, we can go this way and it looks like this, or we could go this way and it looks like this. You have the agency to choose, but in both cases, you are aware of what you're choosing. If you choose to go this way, this is the catalog of predetermined technical debt, including the things that we don't yet know, right? So that's part of your choice. And too often, I think we don't give the COO or the CEO the full picture of the decision that they actually need to make. And sometimes that's because they don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
So now we got to figure out how do we help them want to hear it, right? But I've seen time and again, it doesn't make it a whole lot easier when you do get that failure event. But if you as a product team put the executives into the crosshairs of that failure event, and you haven't given them the heads up early enough on, that's a bad place to be, right? So that's
I totally agree with you, because the only reason I've had 6 months to fix a product right now is because we've been reporting this to them that this is going to happen. So we're actually 6 months ahead of the whole visa, but we're already in the
right. If you hadn't done that, you'd probably be looking for a job.
I think it's also part of the communication up front is optimization versus new feature enhancements, right? And having that communication and agreement early on is really important. Optimization is part of the trust in business. If you're not optimizing what you have, it's going to go bad sooner rather than later, and you have to put a whole lot more money in it later. And so it's having that conversation early and being able to do this as you go instead of have huge backlog of defects and then you have to go and just all hands on deck because we got to fix this. And also there's regulatory and all sorts of other things that you need to make sure we do. I mean, like accessibility is a huge thing, and we want to work with that as we do that.
I absolutely agree. So in the ideal scenario, you plan, when you talk about where we're going to invest for this product, like what are our key themes for this product we're going to develop. One theme is people call it optimization, people call this technical debt, investing into the infrastructure. That time, this investment should be planned ahead. And we're not going to take this. Let it be 20%, let it be 30%. That's a decision that we need to make when we are deciding what are the key elements of this product release are going to be. But it's very easy to say. In the reality, once you get back into like, we need to add this one more feature, okay, we can take any other features out. So the first thing that gets out is that optimization, yeah.
I promise you it goes from like 10% to 2. Every single sprint. It goes from 10 to 2 because some other feature came in, some other thing. I don't know what they call it, you have the same problem with that. The new big MVP, right? What is the MVP you're going to deliver? Wait. That's not MVP yet. You can strip more stuff out. So it's like taking a car and just leaving 4 wheels, no transmission, no motor, something like that. Really bad. That works. The CEO's number to the customer that's really close to the most pain. It's amazing how fast you're in his office. How do I fix this? And make it like
Here it comes.
So, it does hurt when you get to the office, but the good part is you have his focus.
Okay, thank you, everyone for your input and for sharing your experience. Much appreciated.
The CEO's number to the customer that's really causing you the most pain. It's amazing how fast you're in his office. How do I fix this and make this like So, it does hurt when you get yanked in the office, but the good part is you have his focus.
Well, thank you, Dave. Thank you, everyone, for input and sharing your experiences. Much appreciated.